Good morning and welcome to today's episode of Crystalcast. My name is Ross and I'm an immigration lawyer.
My name is Juan and I'm a registered migration agent.
And today we have the lovely Ruth and Ellie, and we're going to be talking about their play Asylum. Ruth and Ellie, thank you very much for being on our show today. It's an honor to have you here and it's a privilege to have you here. Ruth, I'll start off with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So my name's Ruth and I'm a writer, director and producer in the independent theatre market in Australia, in Sydney. And I've been doing this now for about 12 years and I feel like Asylum is the best thing I've ever written, so I'm really proud to be putting it on for the second time.
That's amazing, and we've got our main star, Ellie. Ellie, tell us about yourself.
So I'm Ellie, obviously, and I've been acting for about 20 years now, on and off. Mainly started up in film and TV, and then probably for the last 12 years, more of a focus to theatre. And I was lucky enough to be part of Asylum in 2017, and really happy to be invited back to play Hajir in 2024.
Alright, Ruth, I would like to ask you, how is the process of writing a play? Tell us a little bit about it.
Generally it starts with an idea that sparks your interest, and then for me I start exploring that and looking at it. Usually I write a short 10-minute kind of piece around the subject matter, and they're quite easy to get up and on stage, and if it resonates with the audience then I'll expand that further. So I wrote Asylum a while ago. I'm working on a play about modern slavery at the moment, and because I heard a story about a boy who was kept in a restaurant, an Indian boy who was kept in a restaurant, had his passport and everything taken away and was really exploited. And I thought everybody thinks about the women who are trafficked, but also there's all these young men who are being put in this situation as well. And that interested me, so I'm sort of halfway through a play about that now. And it simply came from an article. Yeah,
so it's based like in true stories, and once you hear the stories, that was maybe the inspiration, because that was going to be my next question, like how you came up with this idea, what inspired you, So
for this play?
Yeah.
Or generally?
Both, generally and for this specific play.
So I have a view that art has to be about truth, always. It doesn't have to be an exact representation of truth, but I think the core ideas of truth have to be present in it. And it doesn't matter if it's a song or a painting or a film or something. I guess we've all had that experience when we've seen something and we're going, it's good, but you can just feel the artist is trying to be clever, right? And they're not getting to the core of what is the truth of that story. So for me, I always aim for truth, and I find when it's based on something real that it's easier to do. It's easier to do. So my skill is in dramatising something. So I read one small report for Asylum and I've dramatised a whole play out of it. So yeah.
It's amazing, and just as you were speaking, Ruth, I started getting goosebumps because I remember reading an article about modern slavery, and it is something that the media doesn't get enough attention of, but it happens so much more than we think. It happens in hospitality, it happens in other industries, because there's a number of migrants that don't hold appropriate visa and they are forced to work because of circumstances beyond their control.
Yeah.
So it is amazing to be able to see that being brought to life, and like you said, being relatable.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing.
And I think the thing that's so disappointing for people in that situation is that many people come here for a better life.
Yeah.
And then they end up in these circumstances, and then they can't go to the authorities because they're being treated illegally, because they actually don't have the rights or they believe that, I think they do, but they don't believe they have the rights of citizens here. So it's very complex, and I love I love that there's this sort of large political thing in the background, but it's a deeply personal story.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And Ellie, your main character, tell us about that.
Yeah, it's amazing actually. Hajir's story is quite personal, and for me, in the sense of, my family, my parents are both from Lebanon. Mum's born in Brazil, but they're from Lebanese, come to Australia 50 odd years ago, and a lot of my family are still there, and now seeing my cousins who are my age or a little bit younger, a little bit older, all leaving Lebanon to make a better life for themselves, to make a better life for their kids. And so the story of Hajir is important to me because it's what my family have lived. It's what my cousins are now living, and seeing them kind of, it's sad because they have to leave their home country, they have to leave their families behind, not just to provide for themselves, but to provide for their children. And there are struggles that they still face, whether they're in Lebanon or outside, in whichever country. I think some of them have gone to Canada, some to America. And it's not an easy process, not just in the sense of leaving everyone and everything behind and moving to a completely foreign world where they have to start from scratch, but even the struggles they deal with on a day-to-day, like even little things too. Like a lot of my family that have come here to Australia, one thing that they don't understand the concept of is how far away we live from each other.
Yeah.
In Lebanon, when I'm there, I would, if I'm leaving my grandmother's house to go to my uncle's pizza shop, which is a 10-minute walk, it takes me an hour to get there.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
every door that you walk past, it's a neighbour who's a family member
You have to
coming
say
for a
hello,
coffee.
exactly.
Yeah, so when you
Yeah.
do want to catch up with a friend or a cousin or relative, whoever it is, they're just in walking distance, and then you come to Australia and just little things like that where if you want to visit a friend, it's going to take up half your day because of traffic, for example.
And we have to make that appointment, lock in the time.
Correct.
It's very different. I cop that from my parents as well by not seeing them enough.
And I wanted to ask, in the middle of this, did you think specifically who you want to reach? Because obviously there is a lot of people that can be involved in receiving the message, but do you have a specific target in mind when all of this started?
No, I don't have a specific. I just tell the truth, and people want to come and listen. That's great, but no, there's not. And I'm not. I don't think the play is preachy at all. That's another thing I think writers and artists have to be really careful of is using a sledgehammer to send a message to people. I like to present what I think is a truthful representation and let people make their own decisions about what's going on stage. And I remember last time we had lots of discussion. People had, because there's lots of stories, not just an immigration story that's going on in this play, and it resonated with different people in lots of different ways. Some felt the family element of it, some felt really related to the traditional asylum. There's themes of mental illness, there's themes of fatherhood. There's lots going on in the play. So no, I don't have a particular message, and I don't have an audience that I'm trying to reach.
Because it is just about overall struggles, really.
It is.
Everyday overall struggles that affect people in different ways. And as Ruth said, it's not just on Hajir's character and him seeking asylum. There's other characters that are going through different issues as well, whether it be, you know, adolescence or mental health. There's something that everyone can connect to. So there's not really one audience that you would kind of push the program towards.
Yeah, and I was just going to say as well, I think whenever it comes to an issue of seeking asylum, being a refugee, there'll always be that sort of political background, and it can be a little bit challenging to maybe go a bit off course, and that message just gets completely diluted. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. I think I'm a strong believer that when you're genuine, that things are gonna run by themselves, and you know, like what you're gonna reach is gonna be so natural, and the reaction in everyone's is, you know, it's like get a message, like not a prepared stage or everything. No, it's like a very natural message, and the fruit of that is gonna be, you know, way better. So it's really good.
Well, I think the thing is that human experience is universal, you know, and then there's a whole artifice of difference that gets layered on top of it, that is about race and othering people, whether they're sick or unwell or in different states of their lives. And the play is really a lot about that, isn't it? About how deep down we're all the same. Yeah,
Definitely. I wanted to ask a practical question, and Ellie, I know it must be challenging preparing for a play. I know that you're very sort of short period of time from getting there. What goes into it? How does one prepare for a production?
It takes a lot of effort for some, and then I don't want to use the word easy. It's not, but like for me, for example, I'll be going through my script and I'll be reading it going, I'm never going to get this down, and then one day I'll be doing the dishes and all of a sudden the lines are just rattling out of my mouth and I've gone, I've learnt them. Like it just happened, but it's just that repetitive nature, right? Where when you do something over and over, it just becomes second nature. And it's the same with line learning.
Yeah.
Beyond that, when it comes to character development, it's something that you can prep and plan, but you don't really get the overall picture until you're all together on stage during rehearsals. And it's when you kind of get that feedback, not just from the director, but also from your colleagues, because the people that you're doing the scenes with, they might deliver a line in a certain way that you didn't expect, and it just changes the way that you would have responded. And so it's really, that's the fun part of it, is that you really get to develop the character, you get to understand the character, but you also get to understand everybody else's character too, and that's when you really form that one team environment. And it's, I mean, with Haji, there's one particular part in the play where it's a very emotional scene for him, and I think that's probably, even in 2017, that was probably the heaviest part of the whole process for me, is diving into a really deep emotional part that's going to invoke those emotions, because it is such a heavy scene for him. And it really, you want to make it as believable as possible, but you don't just want the audience to feel it, you want them to see that you're feeling it too.
Yeah.
And that's so important, especially with something that deep. It's important that they actually see, excuse me, I'm getting emotional now, I'm not joking. It's important that the audience feel it too, you know, they don't just want to see the performance, you want them to feel the performance, especially when it's something that big.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things when I did media arts production back at university a long time ago, they were teaching us to suspend your disbelief and really sort of immerse yourself in a production or a play. Ruth, how do you make sure that audience suspend their disbelief and immerse themselves?
Well, that's the director's job to do that. They do a lot of world building and creating, they want to create something that is believable. The thing about the theatre, and what's beautiful about it is, I could say to you, could you please take my dog for a walk? And a trained actor will pick that coffee up and walk with it, and the audience believes it. It's quite extraordinary. It's called endowing. It's called endowing. And so in this play, we've got 3 separate areas, and you're seeing all of those things at the same time. In reality, you would never have those three spaces that are taking place on the play, in this play, would never actually exist side by side, but people just believe it. They just do,
That's
Does that answer you?
That's excellent. Yes, definitely. And just maybe if we can, I'm not sure how much you're able to share, but can you give us sort of an overview as to what happens in the play? I know it's a 90-minute play, but maybe where can we see it? How do we get tickets? I'm sure we'd all want to know that. I'm definitely going, for sure.
Thank you. So it's on at the Hellenic Art Theatre in Marrickville, which is a fantastic theatre. That whole area in Addison Road used to be army barracks, and there's all these different buildings around the space, and 2 of them have actually been turned into theatre spaces now.
Amazing.
So that's where we're at, between May 2nd and May 12th. And you can get tickets by going to my website, which is ruthfingret.com, surprisingly, or you can just search for it on Eventbrite.
Perfect.
Eventbrite.
And we'll put it in our description as well in the podcast. Now, Ruth, onto Asylum, the play. Can you tell us a little bit about it? What's the story behind it?
So the story behind it is that many years ago I left my husband and I went on online dating, and I met a guy who was apparently quite senior in immigration. He wouldn't tell me quite what his job was, but he seemed to know everything about what was going on, and this was right when there was the whole Stop the Boats thing happening.
Yes.
And he said to me that nobody understands how difficult it is for the immigration officers who have to find out and work out whether someone is telling them the truth. And he said, if say, for instance, someone says they're from Pakistan and they went to a protest, and ever since then they've been harassed by the police, they have to find out where the protest was, how many people were there, who was there, what the weather was like, because they've got to be able to ask them questions to try and ascertain if they're telling the truth. And that's what piqued my interest. And he pointed me to a website which had a load of cases on there, which were from the tribunal, I think. They were the reports by the officers on the tribunal. And I started reading those. And it was amazing to get insight. People from China, India, Lebanon, Pakistan, all over the place. These stories that people had in there. So I read a whole lot of them, and this story is based, the asylum seeker story is based on that, on a couple of those that I read. And then I had a second date with someone else
That's great.
He's also in immigration.
he had not worked in immigration. He's a builder and a man of some means, and he had a son who was, he'd been in and out of trouble at school all his life, and he had said that, I am sick of it, he's done something really terrible, and I'm not helping him anymore. He's got to face the music, and if he goes to jail, so what? I don't care. So there were these two sort of, funny, they happened like within a couple of weeks of each other, and so that was the sort of the start of the play. And I thought, he's running away, he's running, you know, these people here are running away, everybody's running from something.
And in
you
different
know?
circumstances,
And that
yeah.
was, and so there's sort of two main characters that's happening to, and then there's a constellation of other characters as well in the play who put pressure on everybody, who put pressure on these two main people, basically. So I don't want to do a spoiler because it's...
We're going to see it.
You're going to see it, I hope you will see it. But that was the genesis of it. And I guess thematically it's around where do we run to? And sometimes it's internal, sometimes we flee other countries. And
Yeah, and it's interesting as well, Ruth, because we had quite a bit of discussion about the play off camera as well, and I really like that dichotomy between two different characters, but like you said, it's still that same theme, you know, running away, whether that's running away emotionally, physically, and that's all very interesting. I think it's really relatable, really, really relatable.
That was certainly the feedback we had in 2017.
Yeah.
The punters who came to see it, I think they were all a bit stunned when they left the room, because they really didn't know which to talk about. Like, it hits so many spots for people. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Ellie, your character.
Yeah. So Hajir, you know, he's escaping Lebanon and he's been in Australia for some time, and now he's seeking asylum, you know, to get a better life for himself. And the thing that happens with him as the story develops is there's a turning point, and the audience will see that when they come and watch the play. But that turning point is, in my opinion, and I'm sure, you know, Ruth had this when she wrote it, it's a moment of desperation for him, as it is for many others, you know, regardless of what your struggle is, whether it's mental health or, you know, fleeing your home country to have a better life. There are things that you do in moments of desperation for something better. We've all done it, and we'll all do it again. It's just,
of course,
a human response, right, to fear, I guess. And so with Hajir, it's interesting for the audience to get to see those layers to him. But the one thing that was really important in 2017 was, during that time, every newspaper that you opened up, it was all about boat people, boat people, boat people. It was everywhere, right?
And almost demonizing them as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that I thought was really amazing with when we put it on back then was majority of the audience, if not all of them, came out with a different perspective. Not everyone is in agreement in terms of what we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing in terms of letting people into the country and what type of visas we should be giving and whatnot. But some people that came in that maybe had one idea about what was going on walked out with a different perspective.
Yeah.
And it's because they're actually seeing a story that they wouldn't have been privy to prior.
Yeah.
And I think that is important, not just for the asylum seeker, but also for some of the other characters who are also dealing with struggles, whether it be mental health or whatever it is. There are certain things that we don't, as humans, necessarily understand because we don't have enough information.
Yeah.
And one thing that this play does do, which is really lovely and really important, is it does offer a bit of a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so you do walk out learning something different and maybe having your heart and your eyes open up to something that wasn't necessarily there before.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's so important in every aspect of our lives, because when we don't understand something, well, when I don't understand something, I fear it. And for me, a natural response would be to maybe just shut off and not have that conversation. And being an immigration lawyer, we deal with a number of asylum seekers, and you hear the story, and I know we've spoke about, you know, how credible are these stories. I don't think that's the relevant part. The fact is, you've got someone who is so desperate to flee that they would do just about anything. There was a case that we've dealt with recently where, and we came forward to the tribunal, the story was fabricated, but the person was desperate. They didn't know what to do. And I'm really glad to hear that that's the message the play's putting out, you know, looking into different perspectives. But I won't say what it is. I won't say what it is. We have to watch it. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, like it's really nice to hear that, you know, because it's that like there is a message for everyone. Like I love the part where you say, you know, like everyone coming to the room, perhaps they had an expectation, but then like, oh wow, like they leave with a completely different feeling or new feelings after what they watched.
And I think if art doesn't do that, then it's no point.
Exactly.
There's no point doing it. It shouldn't just be decorative or it should open people's eyes.
100%.
Now we always, Ruth and Ellie, we always have a bit of a game on our podcast episodes, and today what we're going to do is we're just going to be a bit of an acting challenge. So Juan and I will throw a random word at you and you respond back with the first thing that comes into your mind, obviously relatable to the word. Acting.
Something I will never do.
Isn't it one word? You cheated.
Okay, never.
Never.
Passion.
Okay.
Emotions.
Real.
Truth.
Asylum.
Fabulous play.
Adventure.
Wild.
Theatre.
Colors.
Alright.